What happens when one of the most talked about women in the world sits down with one of daytime television's most outspoken hosts? You're about to find out, and trust me, this is not your typical celebrity interview. Before we get into this, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me whose side you're on after watching this, because what unfolds here is absolutely wild. So Meghan Markle walks onto the View set, and you can already feel something in the air. Joy Behar is sitting there with that look she gets when she's ready to ask the questions everyone else is too afraid to ask. The audience applauds, Meghan takes her seat, and for the first few seconds everything seems normal. The usual pleasantries, the smiles, the welcome. But then Joy wastes absolutely no time. "So Meghan, let's just address the elephant in the room," Joy starts, leaning forward slightly. "You've spoken a lot about your experience with the royal family, about feeling unsupported, about the racism you faced. But I think what a lot of people are struggling with is understanding why you keep talking about an institution you chose to leave. At what point do you just move on?" The audience goes quiet. You can see Meghan's expression shift just slightly, that smile becoming a little more fixed. "Well, Joy, I think that's an interesting way to frame it," Meghan responds, her voice measured. "When you experience trauma, when you experience racism, when you watch it affect your family, your children, you don't just move on because it's convenient for other people. You speak your truth so that hopefully things can change." Joy nods, but you can tell she's not satisfied with that answer. "Right, your truth. But see, that's the thing that's been bothering people. Your truth. Because there are other people involved in these stories who have their own truths, their own perspectives. And some of the things you've said have been contradicted by palace sources, by timelines, by other people who were there. So how do we know what the actual truth is versus what your perception of events was?" Meghan shifts in her seat. "I find it really interesting that you're asking me to prove my experiences were real. Would you ask that of any other woman who came forward about discrimination? Would you ask someone who experienced workplace harassment to provide you with video evidence before you believed them?" "I'm not saying I don't believe you experienced something," Joy fires back. "What I'm saying is that you've made some very serious allegations against people who can't really defend themselves because of protocol, because of their positions. And I think that puts you in a very powerful position, doesn't it? You can say whatever you want, and they have to just sit there and take it." The tension is building now. You can see it in Meghan's jaw, in the way she's gripping the armrest of her chair just a little tighter. They have an entire media machine that defends them every single day. Let's not pretend that the royal family doesn't have ways of getting their narrative out there. I mean, where do you think all those palace sources come from that the tabloids quote constantly? Joy interrupts. "But you also worked with the tabloids when it suited you, didn't you? Your father gave interviews that you claim blindsided you. But there's evidence that you were coordinating media appearances before your wedding. So which is it? Are the media the enemy, or are they useful when you need them to be?" "That is not what happened." Meghan's voice is sharper now. "My father betrayed my trust. He staged photographs for money. He gave interviews full of lies. I tried to protect him. I tried to help him. And he sold me out. That's completely different from the institution using the press to destroy someone's reputation." "Okay, but let's talk about that institution for a second," Joy continues, and you can tell she's just getting started. "You married into the royal family knowing what it was. You had access to history books, to news coverage, to everything that would tell you exactly what that life would be like. Diana's story was public knowledge. You knew there would be scrutiny. You knew there would be protocol. You knew there would be limitations. So why are you surprised that it was exactly what everyone could have told you it would be?" Meghan takes a breath, and you can see she's trying to maintain her composure. "Joy, there's a difference between knowing something intellectually and experiencing it. Yes, I knew there would be press attention. What I didn't know was that the family I was marrying into would actively participate in feeding stories about me to that press. I didn't know that I would ask for help with my mental health and be told that it would be bad for the institution if I got it. Those aren't things you can prepare for." "But you're a smart woman," Joy pushes. "You're educated. You were an actress. You understood how media works. Are you really telling me you had no idea what you were getting into? Or is it possible that you thought you could change it, that you could modernize it, and when you realized you couldn't, that's when it became unbearable? The other hosts are starting to look uncomfortable now, glancing at each other, but nobody's jumping in to redirect the conversation. Meghan leans forward, her voice firm. What I'm telling you is that I was willing to work within that system. I was willing to follow the rules, to do the job, to support my husband and his family. What I wasn't willing to do was sacrifice my mental health and my safety, and my son's safety, to protect people who were perfectly happy to throw me to the wolves if it meant protecting themselves. Wolves, Joy repeats, almost mockingly. You're comparing negative press coverage to wolves? There are people in this country who can't feed their families, who don't have health care, who are facing actual violence and oppression. And you're sitting here talking about how hard it was to live in a palace because people were mean to you in the newspapers? That lands hard. You can see Meghan's face flush slightly and her voice rises just a notch. That is incredibly dismissive of what I went through, and honestly, it's beneath you, Joy. You can acknowledge that other people have problems without diminishing mine. And by the way, I've done more charitable work than most people in this room. So don't lecture me about being out of touch with real problems. Joy doesn't back down. I'm not dismissing what you went through. What I'm doing is questioning the narrative you've been selling. Because here's what I don't understand. You left the royal family to get privacy, right? That was the whole point. You wanted to protect your family, live a quiet life, get away from the media circus. But since you left, you've done a primetime interview with Oprah. You've done a Netflix documentary series. Your husband wrote a best-selling memoir. You've given speeches. You've done podcasts. That's not privacy, Meghan. That's a media tour. Meghan's eyes flash. We left to get away from the British tabloid press that was destroying us. We left to have control over our own narrative instead of having lies printed about us every single day. There's a difference between choosing to share your story on your own terms and being hunted by photographers who want to sell pictures of your children. But you're still sharing your story, Joy persists. You're still in the public eye. You're still making money off of being royal, off of those titles, off of that connection. If you really wanted privacy, you could have disappeared. You could have lived quietly. But you didn't. You signed massive deals with streaming platforms and you keep talking about the family that you claim traumatized you. So which is it? Do you want privacy or do you want a platform? We deserve to earn a living, Joy. We have security costs that are astronomical because of the threats we face. We were cut off financially by his family. What were we supposed to do? And yes, we've shared our story because silence wasn't protecting us. The tabloids were still printing lies. The palace was still briefing against us, and we had no way to defend ourselves. So we took control of our own narrative. I don't apologize for that. Joy sits back in her chair. Okay, let's talk about some of the specific claims you've made. You said in the Oprah interview that there were concerns within the family about how dark your son's skin might be. That's an incredibly serious accusation. But then you and your husband wouldn't say who said it. You've been vague about the context, and now there are reports that it was taken out of context entirely. Do you stand by that claim? Absolutely, I stand by it, Meghan says firmly. That conversation happened. It was inappropriate, it was shocking, and it showed me exactly what kind of environment we were in. And we didn't name the person because we're not trying to destroy anyone. We're trying to shine a light on a problem. But don't you see how that's worse in some ways? Joy challenges. You've essentially accused the entire family without giving anyone the chance to address it specifically. You've let the public speculate about who it was. You've let them draw their own conclusions. And meanwhile, the institution as a whole gets painted with this brush. If you really wanted accountability, wouldn't you name the person so that specific person could be held accountable? Meghan's composure is cracking now. We were trying to be discreet. We were trying to handle it with some grace. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. I share my experience of racism, and somehow I'm the one being interrogated about how I shared it. Whether I shared it the right way, whether I have enough proof. This is what women go through. This is what women of color go through, and I'm experiencing it right here on your show. Oh, come on, Joy says, and there's frustration in her voice now. Don't make this about me questioning you as a woman or as a woman of color. I would ask these questions of anyone making serious accusations. This is journalism, Meghan. When someone makes claims, especially claims that impact other people's reputations and lives, those claims get scrutinized. That's not racism. That's accountability. You're not scrutinizing my claims, Joy. You're trying to poke holes in my lived experience. There's a difference. And the fact that you can't see that difference is part of the problem. The audience is dead silent now. You can feel the awkwardness radiating from the other hosts who are clearly not sure whether to intervene. One of them tries to jump in. Maybe we should take a quick break and come back to this. But Meghan shakes her head. No, I want to finish this conversation. Because this is important. Joy, you've built a career on speaking truth to power, on calling out hypocrisy, on standing up for what's right, and I respect that. But right now, you're doing exactly what the British media did to me. You're questioning my reality. You're demanding proof of my pain, and you're making me justify my right to speak about what happened to me. Joy leans forward again, her voice sharp. What I'm doing is asking you to take responsibility for the impact your words have had. You're not just some private citizen sharing your story. You have a massive platform. You have millions of followers, and when you make accusations, they have consequences. The royal family's reputation has been damaged. The Commonwealth has been thrown into turmoil, and there are people who genuinely support the monarchy who feel betrayed by you. You don't get to just say whatever you want and then hide behind claims of victimhood when people question it. Victimhood? Meghan's voice rises. I'm not playing the victim, Joy. I'm telling you what happened to me. I'm telling you that I was suicidal and got no help. I'm telling you that my son was treated differently because of his race. I'm telling you that I was hung out to dry by people who were supposed to protect me. Those are facts. Those are my facts. And if that makes people uncomfortable, if that damages reputations, then maybe those reputations deserve to be damaged. Your facts, Joy repeats. But see, facts are supposed to be objective things. Facts are supposed to be verifiable. What you're describing are your feelings, your interpretations, your perspective. And that's fine. You're entitled to your perspective. But you can't expect everyone to just accept it as gospel truth without question. Meghan stands up slightly in her chair, and you can see she's barely holding it together now. You know what? This is exactly why women don't come forward. This is exactly why victims stay silent. Because even when they find the courage to speak, they get torn apart by people like you who demand evidence, who question their motives, who make them prove they deserve to be believed. I'm not making you prove anything, Joy shoots back. I'm asking you to acknowledge that your version of events is just that. Your version. There are other people involved who might remember things differently, who might have different contexts for the same conversations. That doesn't make you a liar, but it doesn't make you the sole arbiter of truth either. Meghan's hands are trembling now and her voice is tight. So what are you saying, Joy? That I'm making this up? That I'm exaggerating? That I'm too emotional to remember things correctly? Because that's what it sounds like you're implying. I'm saying that human memory is fallible, Joy responds. I'm saying that when we're hurt, when we're angry, we sometimes remember things in ways that support our narrative. That's not unique to you, that's just human nature. But when you go on international television and make claims that affect real people, real institutions, you have a responsibility to be accurate. I am being accurate. Meghan's voice cracks slightly. Why is it so hard for you to believe that I'm telling the truth? What do I have to gain from lying? I gave up everything. I left my career. I left my country. I left my friends and family. I joined this institution, and I tried my best. And when it became clear that they were willing to sacrifice me to protect other people, I left. That's the truth. That's what happened. Joy doesn't let up. You gave up your career? Meghan, you were on a cable television show. Let's be honest about what your career was before you met Harry. You weren't a household name. You weren't winning Oscars. You were a working actress on a moderately successful show. Meeting Harry gave you a platform you never would have had otherwise. So don't act like you sacrificed this incredible life. You gained more than you lost. The other hosts are exchanging looks now, clearly uncomfortable with how personal this is getting. But still, nobody stops it. Meghan's face is flushed. Her eyes are bright with unshed tears. But she's not backing down. That is so disrespectful. I worked hard for everything I had. I built my own career. I made my own money. I had my own life. And yes, marrying Harry changed things, but it also cost me things. It cost me my privacy, my safety, my mental health. So don't you dare minimize what I gave up. I'm not minimizing it, Joy says, but her tone suggests otherwise. I'm contextualizing it, because the way you tell the story, you're this innocent victim who walked into this terrible situation and was destroyed by these cruel people. But that's not the whole story, is it? You made choices. You chose to marry into this family. You chose to have a very public, very expensive wedding. You chose to take the titles, to live in the palaces, to enjoy the privileges that came with being royal. And then when the responsibilities and restrictions became too much, you chose to leave. Those are all valid choices, but they're your choices. You don't get to make those choices and then act like everything that happened was done to you. Meghan is breathing hard now, her voice shaking with emotion. You're twisting everything I'm saying. Yes, I made choices, but I made them based on information I had, based on promises that were made to me, based on believing that I would be supported and protected. When those promises were broken, when that support disappeared, I had to make different choices. That's called adapting to a situation that became untenable. Or it's called realizing that you couldn't handle the pressure and finding a way to exit while still maintaining relevance, Joy counters. Look, I get it. Being royal isn't easy. There are rules, there are expectations, there's scrutiny. But millions of people would trade places with you in a heartbeat. You had wealth, you had status, you had access to incredible opportunities. And you walked away because people were mean to you in the press, and your in-laws weren't as warm as you wanted them to be. From the outside, that looks like someone who wanted all the perks without any of the work. Mean to me in the press? Meghan's voice is loud now, echoing in the studio. They weren't just mean, Joy. They were racist. They compared my child to a chimpanzee. They called me everything from a gold digger to a social climber to a manipulative witch. They printed lies about me every single day. They turned the public against me to the point where I was getting death threats. That's not just being mean. That's a targeted campaign of destruction. Joy nods slowly. And that's terrible, I'm not denying that. The British tabloids are vicious. They've destroyed plenty of people over the years. But here's my question. Why do you think you were treated worse than Kate? Why do you think the press turned on you specifically? Is it possible that some of it had to do with your behavior, your approach, the way you handled things? Or is it all just racism and nothing else? Meghan looks like she's been slapped. Are you seriously asking me if I deserved it? I'm asking if you take any responsibility for any of it, Joy clarifies. Because from everything you've said in all your interviews, you're blameless. Everything is the institution's fault, the media's fault, the family's fault. You never did anything wrong, you never made mistakes, you never handled something poorly. Do you really believe that? Of course I made mistakes, Meghan says, her voice breaking. I was learning. I was trying to navigate an impossible situation. But my mistakes don't justify what was done to me. Making a misstep in protocol doesn't justify a smear campaign. Being independent or outspoken doesn't justify racism. And the fact that you're trying to find ways to blame me for my own harassment is exactly the problem. I'm not blaming you for harassment, Joy insists. I'm asking you to acknowledge that you're not perfect, that maybe your actions contributed to some of the tensions, that it wasn't all just a one-sided attack on an innocent person. Because the way you present yourself, you're always the hero of your own story. And real life doesn't work that way. Meghan is standing now, not fully, but she's rising from her seat. You know what, Joy? I came here thinking we could have an honest conversation. I came here thinking that you, of all people, would understand what it's like to be a woman in a hostile environment. What it's like to speak up and be torn down for it. But instead, you've spent this entire interview trying to discredit me, trying to make me look like a liar, or a drama queen or someone who can't take criticism. And I'm done. Sit down, Meghan, Joy says firmly. We're not finished. Yes, we are, Meghan replies, her voice steady now despite the tears in her eyes. I don't have to sit here and let you interrogate me like I'm on trial. I told you my truth. You can believe it or not, that's your choice. But I won't be disrespected like this. One of the other hosts finally speaks up. Meghan, please, let's just take a breath here. I think there's been some miscommunication, some wires crossed. We can reset this conversation. But Meghan is already unhooking her microphone. No, there's no miscommunication. This is exactly what I've been dealing with for years. People who refuse to believe women, who refuse to acknowledge racism, who would rather defend institutions than protect individuals. I thought coming here might be different, but it's the same thing in a different package. Joy stands up too now, her voice rising. Oh, so now I'm defending institutions over individuals? Now I'm refusing to believe women? That's a cheap shot, Meghan, and you know it. I've spent my entire career fighting for women's rights, fighting against racism, fighting against exactly the kind of things you claim to care about. But I also believe in truth, and I believe in accountability. And I believe that nobody gets a free pass just because they claim victimhood. I'm not claiming victimhood, Meghan says, her microphone now off and in her hand. I'm claiming that I was victimized. There's a difference. And the fact that you can't see that shows me everything I need to know about where you stand. The audience is completely silent now, watching this unfold in real time. The cameras are still rolling. The other hosts look frozen, unsure whether to intervene or let this play out. Joy steps forward, her voice sharp and cutting. Where I stand is in reality, Meghan. In a reality where actions have consequences, where people are complex, where situations aren't black and white. You want everyone to accept your version of events without question, without scrutiny, without any pushback whatsoever. And when someone does question you, when someone does push back, you throw around words like racism and sexism and victim blaming to shut down the conversation. That's manipulation, not honesty. Meghan's jaw drops. Manipulation? You think I'm manipulating people by talking about racism? You think I'm using sexism as a shield? Joy, I have experienced real racism. I have experienced real sexism. And watching you trivialize that, watching you suggest that I'm weaponizing these things for sympathy, is absolutely disgusting. I didn't say you haven't experienced racism or sexism, Joy fires back. What I said is that you're using those very real issues to deflect from legitimate questions about your behavior and your choices. Not everything that happens to you is because of racism. Not every criticism you receive is because of sexism. Sometimes people disagree with you because they genuinely disagree, not because they're bigots. But you're not just disagreeing with me, Meghan says, her voice trembling with anger. You're questioning my reality. You're suggesting I'm unreliable. You're implying that I'm lying or exaggerating or misremembering. That's not disagreement. That's character assassination. And I will not stand here and take it. Joy throws her hands up. Then leave. If you can't handle being questioned, if you can't handle someone challenging your narrative, then walk away. That's what you do, isn't it? When things get tough, when people don't bow down to you, you walk away. You did it with your family, you did it with the royal family, and now you're doing it here. But you can't run forever, Meghan. Eventually, people are going to see through the performance. Performance? Meghan's voice cracks, and now tears are actually streaming down her face. You think this is a performance? You think I'm acting? I am standing here, shaking, crying, being attacked on national television. And you think it's a performance? This is my life, Joy. This is my pain. This is real. Another host stands up now, trying to physically position herself between them. Okay, we need to stop this right now. This has gone too far. Meghan, Joy, both of you need to step back. We're going to cut to commercial. But Meghan is already moving toward the edge of the stage. No, I'm done. I'm leaving. This was a mistake. I should never have come here. Joy calls after her, not with anger now, but with something that almost sounds like frustration mixed with concern. Meghan, you can't keep doing this. You can't keep walking away every time someone holds up a mirror. At some point, you have to stop and look at yourself honestly. Meghan turns back, and her face is a mixture of hurt and fury. I look at myself every day, Joy. I look at what I've survived, what I've overcome, what I've sacrificed, and I see someone who refused to be broken by a system that wanted to destroy her. If that makes me difficult, if that makes me controversial, if that makes me someone you can't respect, then fine. But I know who I am, and I know what I've been through, and I don't need your validation or anyone else's. You say you don't need validation, Joy responds, her voice softer now but still firm. But you're constantly seeking it. Every interview, every documentary, every public appearance is you seeking validation for your choices, for your pain, for your narrative. If you really didn't care what people thought, you'd be living quietly somewhere, healing privately, moving forward without constantly looking back. But you can't let it go. You can't stop talking about it. And maybe that's because deep down, you know that some of what I'm saying is true. Meghan stares at her for a long moment, and you can see something shift in her expression. For just a second, it looks like maybe she's going to respond. Maybe she's going to engage with that point. But then she shakes her head, almost imperceptibly, and turns away. I have nothing more to say to you. She walks off the stage, her heels clicking on the floor, the sound echoing in the silent studio. The cameras follow her as she disappears behind the curtain. The other hosts look at Joy, who's still standing there watching where Meghan disappeared. For a moment, Joy looks almost uncertain, like maybe she's questioning whether she pushed too hard. But then her professional mask slides back into place. Well, Joy says, sitting back down and looking directly at the camera, that happened. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. The audience sits in stunned silence as the show cuts to commercial. The tension in the room is palpable. People are whispering to each other, looking around, trying to process what they just witnessed. Some look sympathetic to Meghan, shaking their heads at Joy's approach. Others look like they're nodding along with Joy's points, agreeing that Meghan couldn't handle the scrutiny. The divide is immediate and obvious. When the show comes back from commercial, Meghan's chair is empty. The other hosts try to move on to other topics, but there's an awkwardness to it, a sense that everyone is still processing what happened. Joy doesn't apologize, doesn't express regret, but she's quieter than usual for the rest of the show. She's made her point, but at what cost? The clip spreads online within minutes. Social media explodes with reactions. Some people praise Joy for asking tough questions, for not giving Meghan a pass, for treating her like any other public figure who makes serious allegations. Others accuse Joy of being cruel, of attacking a woman who's been through trauma, of refusing to believe a woman of color's experiences with racism. The comment sections are war zones. The think pieces start appearing within hours. Meghan doesn't comment on what happened, at least not immediately. Her supporters rally around her, calling the interview an ambush, calling Joy a bully, demanding apologies. Joy's supporters defend her journalistic integrity, her right to ask hard questions, her refusal to treat celebrities as untouchable. And in the middle of it all is that empty chair, that moment when Meghan decided she'd had enough, that image of her walking away while Joy's words echoed behind her. It becomes iconic almost instantly, a Rorschach test for how people view Meghan, how they view accountability, how they view the responsibility of public figures to face scrutiny. The View issues a statement saying they regret that the interview became contentious, but stand by Joy's right to conduct challenging interviews. Meghan's team issues a statement saying she attempted to have an honest conversation, but was subjected to a hostile interrogation that prioritized sensationalism over substance. Neither side backs down. Neither side admits fault. What actually happened in that studio? That depends on who you ask. Some saw a journalist doing her job, refusing to accept a carefully crafted narrative without question. Others saw a powerful host using her platform to tear down a woman who dared to speak her truth. Both versions exist simultaneously, and maybe that's the point. Maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle, in the complicated space between Meghan's pain and Joy's skepticism, between the need to believe victims and the need to question powerful narratives. So now it's your turn. What do you think? Was Joy right to push Meghan the way she did, or did she cross a line? Was Meghan justified in walking off, or should she have stayed and defended herself? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure you subscribe because we're going to be covering all the fallout from this interview as it develops. Who do you think was in the right here?